get started, inshallah. Let me share my screen. Okay, do you see my screen?
We can see your screen, yes.
Okay, perfect. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Abdul Latif. I'll be talking today about taking your side project to be a startup. I want this to be like very informal and more of a conversation than a presentation. So feel free to ask any questions in the middle. You can unmute yourself and talk if you'd like, or you can drop it in the chat. In that case, Shams, it would be great if you just tell me what the question is. And then if you have any ideas throughout, just let me know. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Okay. My name is Abdul Latif. I am the co-founder of Tartil. It is a project that uses artificial intelligence to listen to people's Quran recitation and identify their mistakes. So someone can pull up the app, start reciting, and if they make a mistake, the app will tell them what this is. Before that, I was a software engineer at Twitter and NASA, did an internship also at Groupon, but most importantly, I built a lot of side projects, from just like a simple weekend hack to projects that took many months. And this is what I want to spend more time talking about today. So we're going to be talking about three things, inshallah. Number one, how to build a side project. Number two is what's the difference between a side project and a startup, and when can your side project become a startup? And number three is at what point should you take your project full-time and start working on it at a bigger extent? Sounds good? Okay.
Sounds good.
If there's anything else you'd like us to cover, just like drop it in the chat and we'll put it in, inshallah. Okay, sweet. So let me give you a little bit of a background about myself. So over the past years, I did my undergrad in California, and my school, like people used to go to a lot of hackathons like this one. So first year, I didn't go to any hackathons. Second and third year, like almost every weekend or every other weekend, I was attending a hackathon. And I built a lot of different side projects. I can quickly walk you through a few of them, one of which is Muslim events. It's not active right now for obvious reasons, but it's a website that curates all the events happening in the Bay Area. So if we go to, let's say like previous Ramadan, it was used a lot, you can find, yeah, here we go. You can find like all the events, here we go, Ramadan 2019. You can find all the events happening. You can find like an iftar happening near you and then attend it. It had like a chatbot and people can submit events and so on. So this is one project that I've worked on. Another project that I've worked on is called Referral HQ. What it does is that it allows you to get referrals at big tech companies. So if you, for example, want an internship or a full-time job at Google, you can speak with someone at Google to put in a referral for you, and then you would pay for the service. Some of the projects were more community-based. So when the knowtheirnames.com, when the shooting in Australia happened last year, the website might be, yeah, here we go. When the shooting in Australia happened last year, like I felt helpless amongst many others about like what we can do to amplify this voice. And I worked with a few friends on a side project that lists all the different people that were affected in the shooting and entered their information. A lot of people shared this website. We got a lot of visitors, and it also raised awareness. I've worked on a few other side projects, and what I want to talk about is what makes a side project succeed, and how to work, how to do a good job with your side project. And the first thing I want to talk about is the intention of a side project. I feel like a lot of us, like as engineers, want to work on a side project to like use the latest technologies, use machine learning, like build a chatbot when it was cool, and so on. And that is fine, but you should be intentional with why you are doing the side project in the first place. You can always like do it for learning, but I've seen like the side projects that go far are the ones that people are doing it for the problem and not the technology. So find the problem in the community that is, or like elsewhere, either big or small, and find how you can solve this during the side project. The other thing is, when you are focusing on the side project, spend more time on solving the problem and less time on technology. For example, the website that I just showed you, Muslim Events, was built in a weekend. It is like super simple. All it does is a simple HTML page, and the core part of the application is an Airtable embed. It is not actually like coded. And I could have spent like weeks coding this up. But if you use something like Airtable, it's like Excel sheets, but with an API. You will be able to essentially have a backend ready right away. If you want, you can pull the API or you can embed it on your site. This saves you like weeks of work. And if you focus on solving the problem the easiest way, you can focus more on building a project that's benefiting to the users and less so on like using the latest and shining technology per se, which is fine if you want to learn the technology, but most of the time you don't need that like much of an advanced like technology. The second thing I want to emphasize is build the project fast. The reason is, especially earlier on when you're working on your first projects or you're still in college, you do not have a good sense on what project will succeed and which one will not. Your first idea probably you think it'll be like the next Facebook. That was me. Most of the time it wouldn't work out. And the only way to know whether or not an idea will work out early on is to actually launch it and to get feedback. So one thing you should try to do is to limit yourself to building this idea in 1 or 2 weeks, and try to remove all the complexities that would require more time. And believe it or not, like most projects could actually be built in this time, like the MVP. I'll give you an example. One of the projects I've worked on is an onboarding guide for Muslims coming to the Bay Area. So Bay Area is like a hub for tech companies. A lot of people visit the Bay Area and they do not have families, they do not have friends, and they find it difficult to like find housing, to find like events, to like meet other interns and so on. So I built this website and put it out there. All I did was literally go to an app called Bear, called Bear app, I think. Like take notes, which is literally a normal note-taking app, export as HTML, and then just like host it here using Firebase. The whole process took, like the whole like technical process took like 1 or 2 hours. Because again, you want to focus, I can't emphasize this enough, like you want to focus on the problem, like and not the technology. You can even use like a website builder if that like solves it. And then build it fast. So get it out in a week, get it out in 2 weeks, and try to get feedback on it. There is a concept known as an MVP, which is the minimum viable product, which is the least valuable product that you can build so that people solve the problem or can start using it. And you can start experimenting your project with like close family and friends, or like your direct customers, and then over the time expand it. You don't need to have the notion that like the project need to be perfect before like I have like people start using it. And I think this hackathon is a great example where you can get a lot done in just like these 3 weeks and like validate the idea to a certain extent and get it out there. So this is how you build a side project. One thing I would also add is that side projects are a great way to work and learn from people. So if you build a project alone, that's fine. You can probably move fast and get a lot done. But if you work with people, like you'll learn a lot of things, like how do you interact in the time of conflict? How do you have like different dependencies? How do you make people work on different things? and so on, which would be really handful, like in your career and if you want to do a startup long term. Once you have all of these, you will want to determine the potential and how your project has done so far. This whole process should ideally take you 1 to 2 weeks. At the end, you will decide whether you want to continue investing in the project or you want to move on to something different. Let me pause here and see if anyone has any questions so far. Okay, no questions. I guess that's a good thing. Okay, cool. So one thing you'll find happening when you follow this is that you will be building a lot of projects. And on your resume, it will look cool. But at one point, you will probably want to stop focusing on different initiatives and just like drill down on one project that looks good and spend more time on it. And perhaps this project could be a startup that you work on full-time. So how do you determine if this project is worthy of being the project you take on full-time? Number one is metrics. So looking at your user engagement, how often do people use a product? How often does he come back? Does he talk about it? What's their experience like? Because many times, I've seen even like people spend more time building the product than people using it. So you want to make sure that the user engagement metrics are solid. Second thing is the market size, which means, is this project tackling a big enough problem that like we can make revenue and work on it full time? To give you an example, the Muslim events calendar in the Bay Area probably does not satisfy this criteria because even though the product is useful, the number of Muslims in the Bay Area are, let's say, like have 20,000 Muslims. How many of them would be willing to pay for like a premium service? Does the product solve a big enough need? The answer is probably no. So this fails the market size question. Another product I've worked on is like a carpooling platform for events. So you can essentially like create a unique link for each event and have the ability to organize carpools with other people going there. It's been used by like thousands of people, but the market itself is pretty small to actually make revenue. And hence it also does not satisfy the market size problem. And one way to think about it, because you can say like, yeah, these could potentially be like earning enough revenue to work on full time. The question you want to ask yourself is, can I make enough money each year to hire 10 engineers? So for reference, if you're hiring like an engineer that have a salary of like 120,000, you need to be making like $1 million plus a year, the potential of making $1 million plus a year. And if your project does not satisfy this, then it probably means it's not big enough to work on full time. It could still like be a very viable side project, but not a startup. And the last thing is a team. Side projects are nice in the sense that they're low commitment. So if you like them, you can work on them. If you don't like them, you can work on something different. If you're bored, you can like focus on something else. Your like involvement can go up and go down. But when you're working on a startup, it is more serious, and the lows will be low and the highs will be high. So you want to make sure that you have a good team that you're working with in order to take on like this challenge, and people that you enjoy working with, that you vibe with, and you're willing to spend many years on. I've seen like the conception that many times people think that when they go work on a startup, like they will be working on it for like 2 to 3 years and then like move on to something different. But in reality, this is a worst case scenario. Like if a startup is successful, you'll probably be tied for it for 5 to 10 years. And you want to ask yourself, like, is this a group I want to be working with for like 5 to 10 years? And if the answer is no, then like this might be a problem. But if the answer is like, yes, I enjoy being with these people, then this is a good sign. So once you have all these metrics and decide, okay, like we have good user engagement, we have a good market size and I love working with this team, you can decide to take this project and go on it full time. Let me pause here again and see if anyone has comments, questions, thoughts. Okay, so we will move on. So if the answer to all these questions is yes, then you might want to consider going on this project full time. Okay, I think we have a question. How do you evaluate an IDS potential? Okay, that's a good question. You generally need to do a few things. Number one is you want to identify the problem. For example, someone is building, I'll go with the carpooling app example. So I'm building a carpooling app. What is the problem? The problem is event organizers find it difficult to organize carpools to their events. So this is the first step. I know what the problem is. Second step is to determine how big the problem is, which means one of two things usually. It means either the problem is very widespread, or it means that the problem is so big, or the pain is so big that people are willing to pay to solve it. So for example, the carpooling app, the problem is, for example, big enough that event organizers don't want to spend like an hour plus organizing rides, but it is not big enough, for example, to pay $100 per event. So you want a metric for how big the problem is. And then number three is once you know how many people have this problem and how big the problem is, you want to come up with a solution, which is like your idea, and then go to these customers and say, like, do you have this problem? Yes, so they're like part of your users. And then try to validate the idea, like tell them, hey, this is what I'm trying to solve. This is what I'm trying to solve. Would this solve your problem? Would you be willing to pay for it? Would you be willing to pay like $20 a month for the service? Keep in mind that most people will be leaning towards saying yes. And you want at least good enough signal that people are willing to pay for this problem and it's big enough for them to do so. Once the answer is yes, you want to build the MVP and go after these criteria of users. Like for example, I found for the carpooling app that people who are willing to pay are event organizers that are specifically hackathon organizers. Like people doing socials don't care about it. So I want to build the MVP, go to these people and try to tell them, use my product, and I'm selling it for like $10 a month. Like please use it and like become a user. If the answer is yes, then all this is good. The next question is like, how much can I scale it? If you're able to scale it, then usually your idea is good. So you want to validate the problem, and then you want to find the customer, and then you want to go to them and validate the solution. If you do these and you speak with enough people, and the market is big, like most likely your idea is good. Does this answer your question? Okay, sweet. Yes. Okay. So once you determine that you have good metrics, you have a good market size, and you have a good team, should you go full time, or when should you go full time? The answer is like, as engineers, like we typically have a tendency to want to go on something full time pretty early, and as people building products, like you tend to also be delusional on how good your product is. So my personal philosophy is you can actually go pretty far without going full time. For example, if you're a student, you can go for like pretty far in your side project before like dropping out. Or if you have a job and you're working on a project on the side, you can like maintain your full-time job for a long period before you go full-time. One way that it was described to me is that when you're working on a product part-time, it's kind of more like a hobby. and you enjoy, like, whenever you're bored from your day job, you just go and you put your energy in it. You do not have pressure. Your financials are stable, and like overall, like you enjoy working like these 10, 20 hours on this project. But when you go full time, if you're not solid on financials become a stress. Number two, that this is now like your job, so you need to make sure that you're succeeding. If you're not succeeding, it even puts more pressure on you. And lastly, it becomes much more boring, and you typically do not have as much of deadlines as you do in your regular job, or like because your time was constrained. So many times I've seen people become less productive when they go on the project full time, especially like when they're pre-revenue or like pre-funding. So try to get as much positive signal from these before making the switch. And the short answer is, when should you go full time? Is one of two things. One is when you have too much work on your side project that you cannot keep up with both jobs. Like you're getting a lot of users, a lot of complaints, there are a lot of features that you need to work on. And make sure that these are driven by customers. They are not driven by like you want to build new features. Or when you raise money, so you got into an accelerator like YC, or like you raised like a few $100,000 seed round, and you say, okay, like this is now good enough for me to go full time. So if you satisfy any of these, then this is usually a good sign for you to say, okay, I will take this project full time and I'll start working on it. And this is pretty much like the process for going between a side project. Generally speaking, you want to always start a new product, working on it in a limited capacity, validating it, determining that you have good metrics and good market. Once you do so, you will be in a position to go full time and continue working on this project for hopefully many years to come, inshallah. This is all from my side. You can email me at any time. This is my email, inbox@abdulatif.io. Reach out to me at Twitter, and I will open it up for questions. I think we have a question. Okay, how do you stay motivated when making products? This is a good question. So staying motivated is a good and a bad thing. The reason is, if you have a bad product, it is a bad thing to stay motivated and stay working on it, because you will kind of like be still putting more effort, into a problem that like is not going to be solved, or like you do not have the right solution for. So in a sense, like not always staying motivated could be a good thing. I personally try to link motivation more like with customer demand and customer feedback. So I can show you, for example, one of the projects I'm working on, like Tartil. So we have this channel called like feedback, where like every time like we get like app store reviews, like people will just come in and then say like, hey, I love the app, this is my experience. This has been like really helpful, like in keeping the team motivated. But like to answer your question more generally, you want to do a few things. One is you want to pick a problem that you're passionate about. If you pick the wrong problem, or for the problem for the wrong reasons, like you are not going to stay motivated on it like anything else in life. Number two is try to get the product out early to avoid like what I call like the no feedback burnout, which is like you are building the product in like a room, no one's using it, you're only seeing it, you're just building more features, and then after some time you burn out and you get tired and you just like lose motivation. So the earlier you get the product out, the better, because you will either get positive feedback, which is great, or you will get negative feedback and you'll not waste your energy and move on to something different. Lastly is finding people to work with. Like I cannot emphasize this enough, like the people you're working with like make or break your experience. If you are working with a group that is always like flaky, they're not committed, they're not like putting in the effort, it is very natural that you will lose motivation over time. But actually, like a personal experience is when you're working with a team that's always doing stuff, that's motivated, that's shipping new things, this puts you in the mood to like also be motivated. Like for example, Tertil, we launched in 2018. A few months afterwards, I kind of like started like becoming less involved, and there was like less work for me to do. But there was like one person, she was even doing marketing, not engineering. Like she was like working so hard, reaching out to people, and so on. And this kind of like motivated me, and I got back in the loop and I started working. And right now, like we have a pattern where like we have like weekly updates, like everyone's doing stuff. And it's kind of like, it's good and bad, but you also have like a responsibility to deliver. And you get the customer feedback. So you, like with all this together, you stay motivated. Does this answer your question? Okay, amazing. Any other questions? What is the most effective way to brainstorm ideas? So I'll give you a controversial answer and like a less controversial answer. There are two ways. Way number one is a problem that you personally face, you're really annoyed by it, and you want to solve it. Or you see an area for, like you see an area for improvement and you decide to do it. Like a very easy way is like find something that people already do and try to make it more optimized. So I'll give you an example. So when I built Muslim events, it was in a hackathon as well. I personally was like getting a lot of events on Facebook for like MSAs, for like iftars and so on. And it was difficult to keep track for all of them. And at one point I started like favoriting them on Facebook and going back to them. And I figured like this list is only for me. Like what if there are other lists available, if there's one list available for everyone that has like a union of all the events? And I asked myself, like, would I go to this website and use it if it has all the events in the Bay Area? And my answer was like, yes. I asked a few people, the answer was yes. So I built this out like pretty quickly. And I came up with the idea. So solution number one is to find a problem that you're facing and try to solve it or to try to make it more optimal. Second one, which is a more controversial one, is explicitly brainstorming for ideas. And this is more difficult because like when you force yourself to come up with an idea, like you cannot come up with an idea. It's like forcing yourself to sleep. It doesn't work. But what I have seen work is getting into a mindset of experimenting and trying out multiple ideas quickly. So a few friends of mine graduated in 2018 and they raised a small seed round and they decided that they want to work on an idea full time. They had the money, they had the team, but they did not have an idea. So what they did is that they were 4 people. They split into squads of 2. So let's say we have A, B, C, D. What they did is that they said A and B, like people just like dump all the ideas that they have, like a huge list. And then every 2 weeks, they will team up in groups of 2, and each 2 is going to pick up a new idea. For example, like A and C are teaming up these 2 weeks to work on like Airbnb for like real estate. I don't know, that's probably not a thing, but Airbnb for real estate. And then B and D are teaming up these 2 weeks to work on like mental health AI, like an AI that solves your mental health problems. And then what they do is that they spend 2 weeks speaking with customers, validating the idea, building like a mock. You can build a mock in Figma, build a simple landing site in like 2 days. It doesn't have to be like real code, you can fake it. And putting it out there and see how many people sign up. At the end of the 2 weeks, they are going to meet again and say, okay, like this is our results from this sprint. This idea was bad because we didn't get traction, or like this idea didn't work out, we didn't get good reception, or like the market is very competitive, so we're not going to pursue it. The other team will say, actually, I think we have some potential, so we want to spend 2 more weeks like working on this idea. And then like over time, you kind of stumble on an idea that you have like good market, good product, and you can make money. The downside of this though is you might very likely end up on an idea that you're not excited about. Like, for example, like making like some records like online instead of it being on paper. It's like, it could be a very good market with like a lot of money, but like the team might not be as excited to work about it, versus if you're driven from the start to work on this idea because of the problem. Like for example, the Tertial team, like until this point, like we haven't made $1, but like everyone is super excited just because of the mission and the product that we're working on. Alhamdulillah, that's been good. Okay, any more questions? Have you ever had to drop a project because you no longer had time to commit? Yes. Okay, so this is a good thing to think of when you're working on side project. Generally, side projects fall into two buckets. Bucket number one is projects that need a continuous time commitment. And two is projects that you build once and you do not really have to invest in it anymore. An example of like a project you build once and then you don't have to like invest in it anymore is the Muslim onboarding guide, where like you just build the guide once, you put it out, like people are visiting it, you don't have to touch it theoretically for a long while. And even if you need to touch it, you make like small changes. So these generally like are good because you would build them once and you kind of can forget about them. The second bucket, which is projects that need continuous improvement, you might get to a point where you decide, I think like I'm not getting enough like validation, or like I don't think people are as excited to use this project as much, so I'm going to leave it at this level and not invest more. And again, I see this as a good thing because it means that the project wasn't as excited as, or like as good as you thought it would be. I think the wrong thing to do is to keep investing when you have a bad project. So an example of this is the carpooling app that I built. It works pretty well. It's great. But I found like the market is small enough that I don't want to keep investing, building new features. And in a sense, like I dropped it and moved it to other things. The only caveat here is if you are working with other people on a project, you need to be considerate of how like you drop the project. So if you are a team of 3, you're like the only front-end engineer, like it wouldn't be the best move to just like come one day and like say drop your work and say like I'm not working on this anymore. Instead, like try to give them as big of a heads up, try to find a replacement, try to like be involved in a limited capacity, and have kind of like a smooth like offboarding. Just because like people will be screwed like without you if you're a small team, most likely. So yeah, I had to drop a bunch of projects, partly because of time and partly because it wasn't as exciting. All right, we'll take 2 more questions. All right, so I have a question for you guys. What's your progress like in the hackathon so far? Have you built the product, still working on it? Have like designs, like facing problems? All right, and while you type, like one thing I would also add is like learning a design prototyping tool, like Figma, like Sketch, goes a long way, because you can take these sketches, put them on a dummy phone. Most people don't know the difference. Get it out there and try to get like feedback. And you can get so much input without even building a product. So this helps you. This helps you a lot. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I guess we can end here. This is my email. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. Download Tartil and let me know your feedback. Yeah, I think we have one last question. Okay, in regards to my previous question, still working on the project, having trouble making it due to the lack of knowledge. Yeah, I mean, if you can do it, if you're stuck on a technical problem, try to just build a Figma or like a Sketch prototype and get feedback on it and present it at the end of the demo day. I know usually hackathon organizers don't allow this, but you really know the difference. And again, like you'll get what you want out of the project. Okay, how do you get your prototype out? I mean, there are many ways to do it. I mean, one thing is like you don't even need an actual prototype, as I mentioned. Like it could be like a sketch. You can either do like small like scale testing, like with either a beta users group or with small beta users group or with your family and friends, and then like roll it out eventually. You can like make it available publicly early on. Like I think it depends on the nature of the project. But what I would say is, if you're doing like a technical project, one good thing to do is to go to this website called Product Hunt. People here like launch new products all the time. So you can come like submit, like post a new project, upload like screenshots, and people upvote it. And if you have enough votes, you'll be on the front page and you'll be getting a lot of visitors. You can also post your project in different niche groups. So if you're doing something like programming related, you can post it on Hacker News. You can post it on like Reddit links. You can post it on like Facebook groups, depending on what the project is solving and what the project is for. You can try like your personal like channels, like your Facebook, and so on. But the problem is like this is like a precious channel. Like if you overuse it, like people will get bored and like you'll lose engagement. So I personally like only use it for like very high signal like posts. So your best bet, especially early on, is if you do not have users, is to find these groups or communities like Reddit, Facebook groups, and so on, and just posting in there and trying to make it go viral on these groups. This is usually the easiest way. The other also tip I would share about like launching is people care a lot about the story. So if you go on Twitter and you like really tell a story that affects people, like many times like people engage with it and share it just because they want to help you out or because they find the story interesting. So for example, like Atif, who was a panelist in one of the other talks, he's working on a project called Terjimli, and his initial pitch could have been, we solve the refugee, like we make the refugee crisis better, like, well, we try to make it better for refugees by like offering a translation tool. But a more compelling pitch is him saying, like, my grandmother was a refugee. When she immigrated, she had problems understanding the language and so on and so forth. And like this story resonated with people, and it made a huge impact on like their growth. So try to tell a story, try to find communities, and Reddit, subreddits, and so on, and post it there. Okay, I think this wraps up our presentation. Jazakumullah khairan everyone for attending. Good luck with your hacks. Inshallah, at the end of the hackathon, you'll have something you're proud of. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I know you have a bunch of amazing talks coming up. So Shams, if you want, you can talk a little bit about what's next.
Yeah. By the way, Abdulatif, are you on the Ummah Hack Slack, or are you at least are you active on it or at all? Or
I am active on it, yes.
Okay, so somebody could reach out to you via that.
Yeah, this is my name, Abdulatif. Just ping me. You'll be able to find me.
Okay, that works as well. Inshallah khair, later today we'll be having a machine learning workshop that we're supposed to have last week, but our speaker wasn't able to make it. So inshallah we'll be having that today by one of the engineers at Tartil who did the machine learning algorithms there. He's a PhD student at Stanford. He's also the CEO of Gradio. Is he still working at Tartil, or is he still involved at Tartil?
He actually, mashallah, he raised a seed round for his new startup, and he's now working full time on Gradio.
Inshallah, that's amazing. So yeah, that will be tonight at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, and it also will be recorded and posted afterwards, and on Facebook Live as well. Jazakallah khairan everybody for being here. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.